Shoppers aren't projected to slow down anytime soon, heading full steam ahead into the holiday season. According to Deloitte's holiday retail survey, the average shopper intends to spend just over $1,600 this season, surpassing pre-pandemic numbers. With more on holiday shopper habits, we've got Lupine Skelly, head of retail research at Deloitte. It's good to talk to you today. That $1,600 number, though, is that just higher prices built in?
Yeah, there's a couple factors going on. The past couple years, consumers have really been holding back and being a little bit cautious. This year, they're definitely baking in inflation. They're budgeting for higher prices, so that's part of it. The other encouraging sign, though, is that we've seen participation rates come back to kind of normal levels. So back in 2021, we were down to 88%, and this year we're back to 95%.
But then you have to figure, in terms of the economic environment, things like student loans kicking back in, still high inflation, what is motivating people to even want to spend more in this environment this holiday season?
Well, I think the past couple of years, like we talked about, people have had to hold back. They were just kind of waiting to see, and we've kind of missed out on some of the fun parts of the holiday. So it's interesting. We're seeing people say they're going to be spending more in non-gift categories. So the past couple of years, people have been purchasing gifts and kind of checking the box there. This year, they're excited and they're looking to kind of replenish decorations, home decor, and party apparel. So I think it's a good sign that they're feeling okay about the environment and are willing to spend in these categories.
It's interesting when you talk about the shopping duration that you're looking at when it comes to the holiday season. We had a guest on yesterday who was saying consumers are shopping earlier, starting now, thinking ahead to the holiday season. I mean, which one is it? What are you seeing? What's that window look like for retailers to be able to engage with consumers?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So, in the past couple of years when we had stockouts, we saw sales really get pulled forward into October because people were concerned about getting gifts in time. Now we have a different environment, right? We have inflation. We also have an increase in the amount of promotions that are happening in October around those prime days. So it's definitely keeping sales in the October area. We saw similar participation rates compared to last year. But what we're finding is that consumers really are kind of going back to those 2019 levels. They're planning to spend the most part of their budget during that second half of November and into the first part of December. So kind of like those normalization of trends. However, what they're saying is because they're buying fewer gifts, they're going to fewer stores, they're expecting that window of shopping period to come in almost about a week and a half from 2019 levels.
And I want to ask you about an interesting stat that I saw in here. Nearly 30% of shoppers will be responsible for about 70% of holiday spending. So who are these shoppers and how can retailers really tap into that?
Yeah, we wanted to kind of do an analysis and understand like who is responsible for the majority of holiday spending. And what we found is there's a group of about 30% of the respondents who are spending over $2,100 this holiday season. Like you mentioned, they'll represent about 70% of the holiday spending. They've got some interesting sort of demographics. So it's equal men and women. And what they prioritize is quality over price. So that's a little bit different than our the average consumer. They're also early shoppers. So they're jumping on in October. So there's opportunities for retailers to kind of promote early with this group.
You mentioned quality over price, but we have heard increasingly from retailers that it is about value for the consumer right now in this environment. How steep are the discounts likely to be if that's the case?
Yeah, what we found is that consumers are really going for promotions this year. Obviously, they're dealing with higher prices every day. So they're like, if we're spending, we're going to buy it at the most, the best discount. And they're anticipating that to be around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We've seen participation rates skyrocket this year. So 66% of our samples said they're going to be purchasing during that week. And that's up from 49% last year. So these deals and this time period are super important. Retailers are going to have to differentiate themselves during this environment because this is the majority of when people will be purchasing.
And it's interesting, some of those purchases in some of the data that you were showing about how retailers can tap in, self-gifting, something I'm sometimes guilty of when I'm shopping for other people for the holidays, but also the kinds of gifts people are giving. Gift cards really becoming a lot more prominent this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we asked people where they expect higher prices, they said apparel and food and beverage were kind of number 1 and 2 spots. And what we're seeing is people are kind of pulling back in those categories and shifting into gift cards. So people plan to spend $300 on gift cards this year versus $217 last year. What we think is happening is that they're putting the inflation pressure onto the gift recipient.
Fascinating stuff there. I'll see what my budget is looking like as I head into the holiday shopping season. Appreciate that update. Lupine Skelly, Head of Retail Research Leader at Deloitte. Thank you so much.